Happy Monday. Here I am on week 2 of my COVID quarantine. And figured I'd come out and work on my pedal. What else have I got to do? So anyway, today I want to talk a little bit about these foot switches. And these are what we use to, we press these in order to activate parts of the effect pedal. And I wonder how they got the name pedals. When you think pedals, you think rose pedals or pedals on a bike. But, I mean, foot pedals, yeah, but I don't know. So anyway, really they're called special effects, guitar effects. I don't know why my train jumped track there. So anyway, a little bit about the switches here for this particular Klon build. There is a couple of things to note. I had to make a little jumper between two. There's 9 terminals here. So 2 of them get jumper together. So one little trick I did was I just took a piece of wire like this, and I had stripped back enough insulation, tinned the wire with solder, as we talked about yesterday. And what I did was I kind of pushed one end of the wire up into the one terminal, bent it over, laid it over like that, and then just soldered both ends onto the tab, the terminals here. And that made my jumper. So another thing you'll notice, this piece of wire has got a fair amount of insulation stripped back, and the wire actually goes from this top middle terminal to this bottom corner. It's kind of like tic-tac-toe. The thing you got to be careful, you want to tin the wire because you want to make it like solid core. Make it good and stern and stiff so that you can manipulate it. So the thing is, once you get it soldered up top and then you solder it on bottom, make sure it's a nice straight piece. And then you'll need to make sure with your fine point needle nose pliers, you got to have a pair of these if you're doing this kind of work. You got to just make sure that you get that wire in between the other terminals so that it doesn't ground out on them and touch them. Okay, so I've already done that. There are so many little details to doing this kind of stuff. If you're going to be a hobby tinker, really think twice about getting into this as just a hobby. If you just going to do it once in a while, it's one of those things where you have to develop some rhythm and technique, but you have to do it on a regular basis to get good with it, to where you can roll through it. If you just want to build one of these just to build one, you're going to hate it, I promise you. This is a labor of love, and it's got to be something that you'll want to continue to do. So that being said, okay, now that I've got that wire already pre-soldered onto the switch, I'm going to go ahead and wire this bad boy onto the board. I'm going to show you the board here because this is something I just recently did today. Down here, all of these terminals here, these are going to get wired to the switch. So it called for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these wires being 1.5 inches long, and it designated which holes they go in. So they're already pre-soldered. Got one left, and that one is going to be what this wire goes into. So I'm going to make sure that, check the end of the wire here, make sure it's clean. And actually it's got a little burr on the end, so I'm just going to kind of snip that burr off. And then go and find the hole. Like I say, you want to make sure you don't have any stray strands of wire that spread out and touch another part of the circuit, because that will short out the signal and the pedal will not work. And believe me, on these, all it takes is one little strand of stray wire and you're done. That's why we like to tin the wire, so we don't have the loose strands. Okay. Let's get some solder here. I always like to kind of tend the tip of my soldering iron too. Put a little fresh solder on the end of it. And uh-oh. I got a little bridge. All right, so I'm gonna talk about bridges here in a minute. Not the kind you drive across. There we go, I cleaned it up, I think. So, you heard me talk about a bridge. What a bridge is when you're soldering something, a component or a piece of wire, and there is a terminal really close to it, and you get a little too much solder on it, the solder jumpers across and creates a bridge. It actually creates a jumper, or basically it's like having a piece of wire go between the two pieces, where you don't necessarily want that bridge or that jumper in place. So you have to, especially when you're done with the build, get your your magnifying glass with the light, and you want to go across, and you're looking really for bridges. You're looking for cold solder joints, which are basically joints that didn't get enough solder and makes for a suspect connection. That's going to be a problem. So I think I still have a bridge here I've got to correct. That's one of the challenges of doing this is, patience. Sometimes you got to go back and do something twice. Clean it up. There we go. Okay, that bridge has been removed. I'm happy with that now. Ouch, that solder didn't even take. Look at that, pull the wire right out. It's another thing, you always want to check your work. If you solder a piece of wire in, give it about 15 seconds to cool and just give it a little tug. Make sure it actually tugged. Give it the tug. If it pulls out, put it back in. You know what they say, you can't do it right the first time, you can always do it right the second time. That's a good looking joint. Give it a look here with the mag. Yep. Okay. Happy with that. This is almost like painting with Bob Ross, Maybe one day I'll get an easel, like a paintbrush, and we'll paint pictures. Okay. Let's see, I've got my diagram here. So, first wire. Actually, I think what I'm gonna do, I've got all these wires. I've already kind of got one in the middle done. What I may do is work my way in from the inside out. Soldering these wires might be a little bit easier to do that. So let's try it. So that's going to be number 5. And that goes to the middle terminal. Okay, let's clip off the excess. Nice and clean. All right, what's next here? Next wire is 1. That goes to the top left corner post. The key is take your time, read the schematic, look at what you're doing, look at the schematic again, double check, triple check before every connection. Because it sucks when you make a mistake, you have to go back and unsolder stuff and redo it. But I do make mistakes because I'm human and my eyesight's not that good. So let's do this. Double check, number 1, top left. Yep. Okay, it's in the right spot. Let's go and put a little heat to it. Solder. Beautiful. So the big thing I want to mention too is when you're soldering, the key is that you don't want whatever it is that you're soldering to move after you pull the iron away because the solder is still in liquid form for a couple seconds and it slowly cools and dries and hardens. If you move the work before that solder joint sets up, then you're going to have a break and it's not going to take very well and you may have bad connection. So let it cool before you move anything. Now I've got an X-Acto knife. I like the sharp blade. It makes it easy to get in here to move stuff. So this wire is actually touching the next terminal. It's kind of long. We'll bend it up. There we go. Make sure it's not touching something else. All right, let's go to wire number 2. That's going to go down. This reminds me of Hollywood Squares here. All right, let that joint cool. I think there's 2 wires left. So, number 7 goes to the top right. Okay. Number 8 goes down below that. I'm going to go ahead and do number 8 first because it'll be easier to get that one in now. I'll go back and do 7 last. Okay, that's going to have to come in this direction. So it's kind of hard to work with. That's why these needle nose pliers really come in handy. It's kind of like the game Operation, I know you guys remember that game. Okay, number 8. There's down there. Yeah, if anybody tells you they can build a pedal like this in an hour, they're full of it. There is no way. This is really some time-consuming work. I Like I said, you really gotta love doing this. Turning my wires. Other thing about doing this kind of stuff is you learn to talk to yourself. Talk to myself a lot. You might ask, well, what do you talk about? You know, pretty much anything. Talk about politics, music, current events. Don't really care for pop culture because I think it's all full of shit. What else do I talk about? A lot of music. Definitely. All right. I believe I've got one switch done. I've got one to go. And if I'm not mistaken, that is the last piece of the puzzle to having this guy finished, and then we can give it a test drive. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this other switch. I don't want to bore you with the details. You've already been bored enough with the first one. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you guys are getting something out of this if you're thinking about being a DIY pedal builder. I certainly enjoyed, bringing these videos to you to help you out. And for one thing, to help you either to decide, is it worth it to get into doing this, or is it not? Like I said, I think you either got to be all in or all out on this. This is not something that you can just kind of be half-hearted about. If you're half-hearted about it, I wouldn't even bother with it. I would just buy a pedal and be happy with it, And look, these guys, they're charging $200-300 for a pedal. If it's something like this, it's worth every penny. A lot of work goes into them. And if it's going to last you a lifetime, it's going to give you great tone and make you sound better, then hey, it's worth it, right? Okay. You really can't put a price on great tone. So anyway, we'll talk to you guys later.